Now I'm going to illustrate the basic components of the machine that you'll come across that puts all these together. And by the way, the components are the same for every model that we have of the machine. They're simply configured differently for each of the models. In this case here, when I had done the display, you had seen something where it said connected required, and it was saying 8 arrays, 5 arrays, 6 arrays were required, which is for this particular size of machine. And then it did a count on what it was showing. These are actually what it is referring to, which are the light sensor arrays. And what they do in the machine is that they are daisy chained through. I can put a couple here just to show how this thing goes initially, because you may find that you just need to change one array or whatever. They are daisy chained through like this. They're sort of set up, plugged in. They are slid through onto a track into this, and this is exactly what they look like underneath. So in the case that we were looking at, the number 5, which was width, and this is the width coming towards me here, there are 5 arrays, and they are all daisy chained through. This is how they are entered. They come out through a special hub board, which I'll show you here underneath, and then they are brought along through here. So when it's doing a count, which you saw required and done, it actually counts every one of these. Now these are intelligent boards. They have their own microprocessor. They operate totally on their own. So what they do is they do all the mixing, calibrating, whatever, and report their findings back to the CPU or to the hub, which determines what the length is. Now, something that you can do, I'm not sure if I can do it on my phone here and have it seen by the camera, but if you think that one is missing, a little sneaky thing that you can do is if I bring this thing up, can you bring that camera in? I don't know if you can see it. You see what you're seeing right now is actually the operation of the array. And that's what those little lines are for. Now this is a little trick. It's not written in the guide, but a lot of technicians use this just to walk around so that if they're missing an array, for instance on the length, they might run this along to see if one is not powered on, and it just gives them a quick heads up on where to look to see if they have a problem. So this is the same here. This is literally how this thing is determining. And what it's doing is it takes samples, and what you're looking at is it streaming as it's doing the samples. So that's a little shortcut that you can do. That's not in the manual, but a lot of the technicians do it. And they do it usually if they see that this thing says, I don't see one of the length arrays or two of the length arrays. They take their phone and they can go through it very quickly that way. As I say, it's just a shortcut. Okay, now to go through the rest of the components. So these are the arrays. They are simply put this way, this way, this way, and this way. Now in the 480, there are 4 directions. You remember you had the 4 coming out? You have a width that comes out this way here. You have a height here, and the length is actually made of 2 sections. One this way, and one that goes that way there. What happens is they are connected to a board like this, which is a hub board. Now, you saw underneath, and we'll show you, the CPU board, which is under the machine, actually drops down. And right underneath it is the hub. So all the main components are very easy to find. You'll find them right underneath the top there. And the hub board takes the information from the arrays, and each one of these things, if you take a look, you can actually see the sections. Each of these things takes care of a length, width, height. And if you look carefully, you can actually see length 2, length 1, width, and height. And so each of these takes care of it. The main CPU talks to the machine through this little board here, and it goes. Now this hub also does the weight. And the weight is done through load cells that are located on the corner of the platform, on each corner. And each of them is run by a cable like this that plugs into the board like this. I have it upside down here. Plugs into the board like this, and it clicks in, and you can actually remove them if you have to remove the board or whatever. So this little section here does the weight. And what it is doing, which is kind of unique on a lot of scales, is that a lot of scales, because the load cells are always a little bit different, actually have little resistors you're supposed to trim. What this thing does is actually samples every one of these things here by doing a weight calibration, which we'll get into later, and it will do 4 corners, and it will figure out exactly the characteristics, so that by the time you've finished, it knows exactly what the characteristics are of every load cell, so no matter where you put the weight on there, it can very accurately determine what the weight is. It is determined in this circuitry, and it goes out with the dimensioning equipment. Now, something else that's in here that is used on this board here is the LED status board. And there's a connector that goes through that little status board, is actually this here, and everything connects. Everything's modular. So this thing here, it runs through, and it will be run onto a cable that's connected on this board. Now, if you happen to be servicing some of our other equipment, all of this will look, even on our 265 or smaller 165, this will look very familiar. The only difference in the smaller module, or the tabletops that we have, is the status board is run from the main. But on the 480, it is part of the platform, and it is run off the platform. They all just plug out and plug in. And as I say, these are the 4 load cells. This runs down and is connected into the main computer, or the main load cell thing here, right here. Now I'll put the second here, and there we go. So it actually sits, if this was like, you could see this with an x-ray, it would be sitting like this. And what happens is the hinge drops down, and you've got access to all these parts. And you can also use the machine for figuring everything out, so we'll do that a little bit later. So that is the orientation. These are the main components. So there's the main CPU, there's the hub, which takes care of collecting all the data from the platform, and part of the platform is the 4 load cells, and then of course there are 4 lines that are run for each of the arrays that are going on. And what we'll do as we go through this instructional video is we'll label them to the point where if you do determine that you have a problem and you have to replace some arrays, we'll show you how to gain access. As I say, everything plugs in, and we've tried to design this to make it as easy to service as possible.